Hello, Shweta. Now you are host. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So now you can start your because it is linked to the YouTube. YouTube started already.
Yes, sir. Ashmita is joining.
Please you show your PPT. Okay.
Okay. Okay, sir. Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening, Ashmita. Can you see the screen?
Hello?
Hello, is my screen visible, Ashmita?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So in the previous class, we had seen how forensic, what is crime scene investigation and what are the methods in which we do search in the crime scene investigation. And also we had learned about what are the physical evidences that are there in crime scene, that are there in the crime scene investigation. So today now we are going to learn the steps of how a forensic investigation or a crime scene investigation is take place. So can you tell me, like from the previous class, what do you remember? Like the main idea of how a forensic investigation should be undertaken?
Ma'am, we had discussed about the secondary evidence and how forensic crime scenes get investigated and how the evidence is collected.
Correct. So in what measures we are going to collect evidences. So it's again the same concept, but it's more precise and it's more detailed how these steps are going to be explained. So basically, the first step is in identifying the scene dimension. What do you mean by scene dimension is understanding whether it is an indoor crime scene, whether it is an outdoor crime scene, and through these crime scenes, where can we start our investigation process. So say suppose in an example, when we talk about a place where a murder has been committed, right? The place from where the body of the victim has been found can become the focal point through which the search or the process of finding evidence can be started. Like I said, depending on, like in the previous class we have discussed, depending on the area of the crime scene. If it's an indoor crime scene, we probably use which method? We use strip search, or we use strip search, like going through one point to another and going in a, we use spiral method, going from one point and around that point we're going through in a round or spiral way, we're going to the other areas. And when we talk about a more vast area like an outdoor position or an outdoor crime scene, then we are going to go through different methods like strip search or zone search, all those different methods that we discussed. So basically, when we say we have to identify the dimensions of a scene, it basically means to understand, to where the investigation should start, the focal point from where the investigation should start in order to understand and realize where the evidences are around the victim's body, or say suppose in the when we say a mobile crime scene, maybe around in a vehicle or in a car, a vehicle like car or buses, wherever the crime has been occurred. So investigators have to initially locate the focal point, and then the in the main area of the disturbance. Then they had this areas could be anything like a ransacked bedroom, ransacked in the sense where a burglary might have taken place and the entire crime scene is in a what do we say? The entire crime scene is upside down. The area where an attack has occurred, say suppose an assault or battery, a case of battery, assault of battery, and then or the room in which the victim was found, basically the dead body in which the dead body of the victim was found, or a person, an injured person was found, could be the place that could be the focal point for the investigation. So as to establish the focal point, why is establishing the focal point necessary is in order to understand and realize from where the evidence collection should start, to understand the process from where the point from which the investigation and the evidence collection should start. So radiating out from that point, then the investigator has to establish the sizable amount of physical evidence that is present. So it becomes really easier for the investigator also to understand and to if say suppose if there is a starting point, then the investigator would search from that starting point and would come back to the same end point. So it becomes really important in order to understand the starting and ending of a crime scene, in order to come back. So in order to understand if the crime scene has been thoroughly investigated or not for the evidences. And the investigator, it is easier for investigator to condense the size of the scene at later point than to discover the sensitive evidence outside the scene that has been damaged or destroyed by other responders like media or onlookers. And in addition, the potential paths of perpetrator entry and exit are identified. So in any, say suppose in murder cases or in homicide cases or in burglary cases, in cases of theft, it is really important as an investigator to establish through which point there was an entry and exit. Because in most of the cases, in homicide cases that probably are not homicide but suicide cases. So to establish whether it was a suicide or it was a homicide, if there is an entry and exit point, if it is established that no one was able to enter or exit that room of scene where this has occurred, where the probable suicide has occurred, if there is no establishment of entry and exit, so what happens is basically that the investigation is ruled out for homicide, and and the suicide is confirmed. So therefore, in several cases, again in burglary cases also, establishing the entry and exit would possibly give you an idea of the criminals or the number of criminals that were involved, basically from the footprints that could be available from the entry and exit point. So the evidences can be found from the entry and exit point. So the footprints or any other evidence that could be found. So in burglary cases also, it becomes really important to establish these entry and exit points. And then, as I said, in a very popular case, I've already mentioned this before also, in the Arushi Talwar case, the major issue in the investigation was that the first respondent or the police were not able to establish and secure the crime scene. And what happened was the media and onlookers entered and exited the scene of crime, and therefore resulted in contamination of the evidences. So in order to decrease the possibility of damaging these evidences, it is very important as an investigator to understand what all are the focal point and understand the area that requires to be secured immediately. And safety is of paramount importance during the initial approach to the scene, because again, weapons, biohazards, chemical hazards, and even intentional traps could be waiting for the responders. And if medical or fire or coroners will be on the scene, they will need to be advised regarding the evidentiary issues as well. So again, as I said, when we are a crime scene investigators, we work in a team. We don't work individually. So because in a crime scene, again, every crime scene is different from every crime scene is one crime scene is not the same as the other crime scene. So when we talk about safety, so say suppose it's a now say if kind of a bomb has been found in a certain area. So in order to defuse the bomb, a team of bomb experts have to, bomb diffusers have to come in order to defuse that bomb, right? So if there are any, say suppose if in an area one bomb has detonated and there is a possibility of having another bomb. So the place where one bomb might have been detonated, there would be, there could be individuals who have suffered injuries and who need immediate medical attention. So medical and fire department could be the people who would come and respond in such situation. So as the investigator, it is really important for us to tell them that it is a crime scene and these could be an important evidences. So probably you must treat the patients and look after the fire safety as well, but in a way that you do not probably destroy any evidence unknowingly. Correct. So as that also becomes really important. And also as an investigator, our safety, our team's safety, and their safety as well, the medical respondents or the fire department fire respondents, all of their safety also comes under our our responsibilities. So making sure that the second bomb or presence of a second bomb, so it doesn't detonate, or making sure that they are in a safer distance, transporting the individuals who are injured. All of these comes under our primary step in an investigation. So we have to establish if there are any witnesses in the situation, if there are any victims who are injured. So again, the primary primary idea would be to safeguard these individuals before investigating or before going further in the investigation. So the first step is basically identifying the scene dimension. And why identifying scene dimension is important? Because our second step is to secure that scene. Any investigation, as I said before, according to Lockett's exchange principle, every trace or every crime leaves its trace behind. So according to him, every person who is entering or exiting any scene is thereby adding or subtracting a material in the crime scene. So it is very important to secure the area of the crime scene. And as the head or as the chief crime analyst or the crime scene investigator, it becomes important to secure the scene. And how can you secure the scene? So again, the first step, identifying the scene dimension, would become important. Identifying the focal point from which the scene should be covered. So say again the example of a bomb scare, or a scene, again taking the previous example of where one bomb has detonated, the other bomb still remains in the place. So in such cases, when again the bomb squad could come in and detonate the other bomb, but here you have a primary scene, a primary crime scene where the bomb has detonated. So preserving, again, when we talk about bombs, is it in a inside, is it in a indoor crime scene, is it in an outdoor crime scene also becomes important. If it's an outdoor crime scene, then preserving that, preserving the evidence can be sorry, not preserving the evidence, preserving the crime scene can become a little bit difficult, because the area under which the crime scene has to be secured is a huge area. So at such point, understanding what are the possible areas that should be preserved, how many what distance from the crime scene should be preserved, say suppose how many kilometers of area should be preserved from the crime scene. That could be something that you have to take into consideration, and thereby using the yellow tape and other methods in order to preserve anyone from entering the crime scene also is an important step. So to control access, the scene may be cordoned off with yellow crime scene tape, cones, or by other means, as I said. So in order to prevent any unofficial access of others, the crime scene should be taped with the yellow tape, and cones, the cones that are used by the police, and any other mean. If, say suppose the crime scene tape is not enough, so whatever other means that could be used to preserve that area should be used. Now, a common entryway is often established that all crime scene sorry common entryway is often established that all crime scene personnel will use to enter and exit the scene, and all people entering or leaving the scene are documented once the boundaries have been established. Additional areas of consultation and evidence storage may also be established if necessary. Again, like, it becomes really important. So in order to not contaminate the area, but at the same time, the team of investigators have to come in and go out in even in the crime scene, right? So in order to prevent that to happen, in order to prevent any contamination, what can be done is an entryway and exitway can be established. Say suppose when we understand what is the dimension of the crime scene, we can understand that, okay, this particular area is really important because it is filled with evidences and it needs protection. So we protect that particular area. But at the same time, when we can establish a certain area which is safer, which is comparatively safer to enter and exit from, correct? A routeway or a pathway to enter and exit. So that should be established. And whenever a person from your team, an investigator from your team enters the crime scene and exits the crime scene, it is important to maintain a log or a notebook in order to understand who, at what time, at what place, at what time, at what date, or at how many times these individuals have entered and exited the place. And documentation will ensure that there is no there are no way that the what do we say, the evidence has been tampered. And then is this clear so far? Okay, so the next step would be create a plan or communicate. So before, again, as I said, we are a team player when an investigation takes place. It is not only one person who can collect all the evidences and process all the evidences. So it requires a team of scientific investigators, and therefore it is important to create a plan among these scientific investigators and to communicate as to what all should be looked after in this investigation. So whenever a complaint is received, or whenever a call is received, or whenever there is a idea that some crime has taken place in certain area, and as investigators we are called upon, we are well aware that some of the primary information are given to us by the first respondents. Probably and mostly police could be the first respondents in most of the cases. So some of the evidences are given that some of the, if there is primary investigation that has undertaken, like some witnesses have been already questioned, or there is some information regarding to the say suppose looking at a crime scene, you can understand that probably it's a case of theft, or probably it's a case of burglary, or it's a case of kidnapping. So in such cases, we have some primary information with us. So depending on the information, we should be able to communicate and create a plan as to how this crime scene investigation should go forward from here. So they should have certain idea or a theory. Okay, if it's a case of kidnapping, say suppose it's a case of kidnapping, then the investigator would be expecting a ransom call, right? Because probably this might be a case, because if it's a person who is affluential, this individual is affluential and capable of any financial help. So this could be one of the possible scenario where these individuals might be behind. You can understand that these individuals are probably behind some financial financial aid or financial ransom. So therefore, in such cases, you are expecting a ransom call. So being prepared with the, by tracking your cell phone device, or being prepared with a recording device that could be used in order to track the communication, or in order to lead it to the criminals. So this is, as an investigator, it is really important to have that presence of mind and plan ahead of the time. So before collecting evidence, investigators must develop a theory regarding the type of offense that occurred. So as an investigator, it is really important to create a theory, but at the same time, our main aim should not be to prove that theory or to disprove that theory. Our main aim should be to find the facts, and based on the facts, creating a theory. So we should never be biased. Sometimes what happens is in an investigation, when we have certain theory, in order to prove ourselves right, we may unknowingly get biased towards certain evidences and ignore some other evidences. So as an investigator, creating a theory is definitely an important step, but at the same time, we should be well aware of when this theory should not influence or bias us in any way. And knowing the type of crime will help investigators. Knowing the type of crime will help investigators anticipate the evidence that could be present. So, just a second, Ashmita. Okay. Knowing the type of crime will help investigators anticipate the evidence that could be present. So again, understanding a crime scene, looking at the crime scene, we can understand whether whether we are looking for burglary, whether we are looking for a case of arson, or whether we are looking for a case of kidnapping. Again, in order to understand that, because if we know, say suppose we know it is a scene of burglary. So as investigators, can you tell me, Ashmita, what would be the evidences that you would be looking for in such a scenario? Hello? Ashmita?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you hear my question? Should I repeat it? Okay. Hello?
Yeah, can you just repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. So my question was, as an investigator, if you're told that the case is of burglary, okay? So what do you think are the possible evidences that you can find in a scene, in a crime scene of a burglary? What would be the evidences that you would be looking for as an investigator?
If the door was broken, firstly, if it was like a forced entry, or if the apartment was allowed, if a burglar was allowed in the apartment, that is first thing. What are the items that are missing? If and rather how they were missing. Rather, for example, if there's a wardrobe and the locker has been broken, or if it was opened with a key, and then how things are lying around in the house. If it was like a particular thing the burglar was looking for, or if he just took whatever that he saw.
Okay.
Okay, and fingerprints, obviously, that is given.
Correct.
Fingerprints is there. Maybe even footprints, perhaps the shoes, the marks that might be there on the floor, that is also there. And that is all I can think of right now.
Correct. So whatever you said are the correct points. So basically, you're looking for, again, as I said, entry and exit points of the crime, probably the entry and exit, and whether there was forced entry or whether there was forced exit. And when we are talking about entry and exit points in the evidence will be probably in the form of broken glasses, or any hammer, or any other tools that might have been used in order to enter the premises. So as in the form of evidence, you would be looking for, if in the form of physical evidence, you would be looking for any tools or any broken glasses, any in some cases there could be bullets that could be used for the bullets that could be used during that might have been used in the crime scene. So any bullet marks in the walls or anywhere, if during the burglary, if the individuals were threatened with the threatened with the, what do we say, a gun or a knife in such cases. So we'll be looking for those items. And then we can be also looking for any other samples in the form of DNA, or in the form of, like you said, fingerprints could be one form of evidence that we can be looking for. In some of the cases, when in robbery cases specifically, there was one case in which an individual had the not the individual, sorry, the perpetrator had smoked a cigarette in the crime scene, and the remain of that cigarette had become an evidence, because through the remains of that cigarette, the DNA was the investigator was able to collect the DNA, and therefore that had become an uh, evidence in that case. So such minute understanding of the area and understanding of the evidence is really important. So in order to have that minute detailing or observation, we need to understand primarily what kind of crime had taken place, or what is the probable theory of that crime scene, correct? So this may require gathering information from witnesses and person of interest. Based on this information, the crime scene team will develop an evidence collection strategy, taking into consideration the weather conditions, time of day, and other factors. Additional forensic resources may also be requested to handle special situations. So based on all of the information that you have gathered from witnesses or any person of interest, probably any person who was present or who was the first respondent. In many cases, the first respondents can be the neighbors or a friend, correct? So they can become the person of interest, or any suspects, like if the call of say the emergency calls that we get, the police gets, the emergency call was made by the suspect himself or the criminal himself or herself after committing a crime, can also be the person of interest. And based on all of these information that has been collected, the weather and determining the evidence, how the evidence should be collected, the team can decide how these evidence can be collected, through which method the evidence should be collected, through spiral method, through strip search, through a zone search, through which method should the evidence be collected, and what all team probably would be important in this search method. And now, when we talk about consideration of weather condition, why is the weather important? Because when we talk about, say, suppose finding a victim's body, the weather condition really, increases the chances of their bodies. It helps in determining the body's condition, whether the body is, say, suppose the decaying process of the body can be delayed if it's more colder weather. If it is a very humid and very high temperature weather, then the body's process starts very early, and uh, the destruction of body or the decay process starts very rapidly. And therefore, with that information, the time of death and the probable time of death and uh, the evidences that probably could be collected from the body can also get influenced. So therefore, uh, noting down the weather condition at the time when the investigation was being taken place, at what time of the day was the investigation being taken, and all of the other factors would come into the process while you're discussing collection of evidence with the team. And if any other forensic help is needed, suppose if it's a scene where some kind of poison or hazardous material has been found, so you will require a team of toxicologists to come in and help in such condition. And since there could be a danger in your life if you enter the crime scene, so probably having all the preparation or extra resource, like the kits that you get for entering the crime scene, the suits, the suits required to enter such scenes would also be something that is important when you consider when you consider entering a crime scene. So therefore, such additional resources are also very important. And then conducting primary survey. So an initial survey of the scene is conducted after creating a plan, after forming or discussing all the plans and communicating all the information to the team. The initial survey of the scene is conducted for, again, basically evidence is the major important evidence is something that is very important in the scene that we are collecting. Therefore, discussing and initiating the process for the evidence collection is the primary step. During this walkthrough, the lead investigator will identify potentially valuable evidence. So while going through the process, while searching for the evidences, the lead investigator is the one who is responsible for understanding what could be the primary evidence or the valuable evidence. Because as I said, in a crime scene, you can find n number of items, but in those n number of items, which item is more important or which has more evidentiary value is the task of the primary investigator, is the task of the lead investigator. And the lead investigator is also responsible for taking notes and capturing the photographs of the scene and the evidence. Capturing of the scene and evidence is important because it establishes the chain of custody. It can be established that the evidence that was found in the crime scene is the same evidence that has been presented in the court during the trial process. The crime scene is documented to record conditions such as lights were on or off, the position of shades, the door's position, or movable furniture, the smells that were present during the time, the temperature of the scene, etc. So why are we documenting all of these information? It is to understand whether in a crime scene scenario, whether say suppose a furniture has been moved. So probably there was someone who had moved the furniture in order to gain access to something. Or say suppose a smell is present. It could be the smell of a perfume, or it could be odor of the body that is found. All of that is important in order to understand that what could be the possible, how it could be possibly linked to another person, or is there probably a chance of okay, so I'm really sorry for the interruption. Okay, the crime scene is Ashmita, just a second, I'll be back. I'm really sorry for the interruption. So yeah. Okay, the crime scene is documented to record conditions such as the lights were, again, we have finished this point. So basically understanding whether the movable furniture, why was the furniture moved, whether the crime scene, whether the, say suppose again in a burglary case, if a furniture is moved, was it anyway responsible for their entry or exit? say suppose a chair was kept in a window, so it could be established that probably that was the point from where they had exited. Correct. Probably used the help with the help of the chair there, they exited through the window. So these could be established through the crime scene documentation. And to facilitate this process, crime scene specialists may create an evidence-free pathway leading to the primary area of interest by conducting a thorough sweep for evidence in that area. So in order to understand crime scene, specialists have to go through all of the places, again, understand where the possible evidences could be, and whether or not they're missing out on any evidences. Then we have documentation and processing. So with the plan in place and with the evidences that have been collected, the next step is creating and documenting the process and then processing the evidence as well. So documentation can take place in the form of digital evidences by recording a video and taking photographs of the scene. In some situations, diagrams or sketches can also be drawn. So during the evidence collection process, it's crucial that the crime scene investigator has to follow proper procedure. So basically collecting the evidence, then packaging it. So like we discussed, when there is blood involved, so how do you collect the blood sample? So if it's the blood is found in a cloth, say suppose, so probably removing the piece of cloth where the blood is, and then preserving it in a airtight bag, a plastic bag, or Ziploc plastic bag. Or if the blood is say wet, then collecting the evidence in a cotton swab and collecting it and preserving it in a particular temperature, ideal temperatures like 50 to 60 degrees temperature. And then preserving this evidence in the preserving this evidence and then sending it properly to the FSLs, where the further investigation, not investigation, where the further processing can happen, and further analyzing the evidence and establishing whether the blood stain found is part of the victim or the perpetrator, and connecting the victim and the perpetrator through these evidence. And then biological evidence can be destroyed or damaged because of the weather condition, or because of unknown contamination by directly coming into contact with air. So in order to preserve all of that, it should be well kept in mind that such evidences should be preserved in their proper evidence bag. So suppose when I said blood, so collecting the blood in the proper cotton swab and preserving it and sealing it, and then labeling the evidence with the unique number, with the say crime scene number, with the evidence number, because in a crime scene you're not, if you're getting several evidences, so each of the evidence is numbered from 1 to n, whatever number of evidence you find. So whatever the evidence that you're finding first is numbered 1, when you're finding the next evidence, you're numbering it 2, and so on. So therefore numbering those evidences, labeling those evidences, and packaging it completely airtight sealed packages, and then taking them to further analysis to the FSLs is really important. And then from the FSL, again, preserving those evidence until the trial comes to an end is again an important process. And since biological evidences can be impacted because of the weather and because of any other form of contamination that can happen, they should be kept, and different evidence have to be kept differently. So when we talk about blood, as I said, it should be kept in a 50 to 60 degree environment. And then there is, when we talk about, say suppose ammunitions, bullets that are found in the crime scene. Bullets can be preserved in a airtight container, and again, they might not have any other impact on them, but the weather cannot probably have any impact on the bullets. But we should be still careful. Touching those bullets or leaving our fingerprints on the bullets could be harmful. Again, other evidence like DNA should also be preserved. Depending, so basically, depending on whatever evidence we are finding, it should be preserved accordingly. And then a secondary survey, just in case, if as an investigator we might have missed on some of the evidences, or we might have ignored some evidence unknowingly. So just going through the crime scene for a second survey is a really important step, just to ensure that no evidence is left unturned. So to ensure that the scene is thoroughly searched, a second survey of the area is conducted as a quality control step. And then recording and preserving the evidences to make certain that all evidence is accounted for and inventory log is created. So in that inventory log, whatever the evidences have been collected, whatever those, at what time, at what day that evidence had been collected, at what was the evidence, what was the number of the evidence, what was the case number, all of that, or what was the labeling done, how was it sealed, how was it preserved, all of these information should be in this inventory log. And again, in this log also contains the person who has exited or entered the crime scene as well. So the description recorded into the log must match the photo of the evidence taken at the scene and the description included in the crime scene report. So when you're talking about the description that is in the crime scene report about the evidence, it should match with the logs entered. So this ensures again that the evidence that is presented in the court is the same evidence that was collected from the crime scene, and it was not tampered or it was not a false or made up evidence. So there's an example given. If a gun is collected, the serial number of the firearm is the evidence in the evidence log must match the serial number shown in the photo that was taken at the scene. Correct. Okay. When we talk about evidence, there could be also digital evidences. So for digital evidences, what we do for CDs or say suppose hard drives is that there's hash values assigned to these electronic devices. So those hash values should match with the evidence that is presented during the court. So all of these evidences, all of this establishes what we call the chain of custody. So basically, what is chain of custody? It is something that indicates that the collection, the sequence of control, the transfer and analysis is maintained of the documents, which is handled. And again, these evidences are handled by different people. Sometimes it's handled by police, sometimes it's handled by the scientific officers in the forensic laboratories. So therefore, all of these, even after the handling through different people, these evidences should remain intact and they are not tampered. They should not be tampered, and therefore maintaining these log books, maintaining these photographs, maintaining the crime scene, maintaining the information in the crime scene report, all of this is basically establishing the chain of custody. So this chain of custody ensures it becomes a so basically it encourages or it ensures the victim or the accused or the witness that these evidences that have been present in the court are not tampered or are not made up or false. Okay. Now, is it clear so far, Ashmita? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
So now we'll see a short video in which, so basically it's a video of forensic. Let me share my screen first. So it's a video in which a forensic expert has has explained how some of the movie scenes are fake or real. So we'll just see 5 minutes or 6 minutes of the video. Is the screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Just let me know if you can hear the video. Is the
Not yet, ma'am. Not yet.
okay, 1 second. Just a second, Ashmita.
Hello, my
What
name
about-
is Matthew Steiner.
What about now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Matt Steiner is a senior crime scene analyst and veteran investigator of over 22 years.
Today I'm breaking down crime scene clips from movies and TV again. Decomposing body, Silence of the Lambs.
What else do you see, Sterling?
Well, he's not local. Her ears are pierced 3 times, and there's a glitter nail polish.
So what I did like is, she starts describing the injuries, and she does a really good job of describing a contact gunshot wound. She then describes a star shape or stellite pattern,
Star-shaped contact entrance wound.
which is indicative of a contact wound. They also say they're going to flip the body over to make it easier to fingerprint.
She'll be easier to print when we turn her over.
That's true also. It is easier to fingerprint the body if you turn the body over. If you look at the way they show the arms, they show what's called marbling. And then that's like part of the decomposition process where the hemoglobin will break down inside the blood vessels. But if we have arms like she had where it was in that stage of marbling, we would also see more advanced decomposition in her face. In this scene, we see that Clarice notices something that was in the photograph that they didn't see normally.
She's got something in her throat.
If you're taking a close-up photograph of something, you'll notice more detail in that photograph than you would with your naked eye. So this does happen. They're used to these smells. You would never see them with anything underneath their nose like that.
Right.
It's better just to get used to the smell. Like, you'll get used to it and you just will forget about the smell. But if you try to mask it, occasionally you'll get a whiff that's going to break through that vapor rub and it's going to be worse.
Lord Almighty.
Transient evidence.
So, like you can see, photographs can also help in understanding the evidence. So while you're clicking a photo, it can also help us understand something that we might have not noticed with our eyes. Because again, when we are talking about decomposing bodies, it might not be very easy due to the smell or the odor that the body is spreading. It's not easy for us to go in and look for evidences closely. So these photographs, so one purpose of photographing and documenting is that sometimes whatever we have not seen during collection of the evidence at that particular time can be probably seen through these photographs or the videos. It can help in that way.
Sherlock. In this scene, he notices very important details about the transient nature of evidence, things that aren't permanent. Areas are wet, areas are dry. So you get to the crime scene, there's a glass on the counter and it's got ice in it. It's not going to stay, in that form. It's going to melt eventually. There's no other way to capture that than to note that And these are all types of transient evidence that we could encounter at a crime scene. And that's what Sherlock Holmes is all about. It was all about the devil being in the details. Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of Sherlock, was himself a doctor and a scientist, and was a great influence on the field of forensic science. Most notably, he influenced Edmond Locard, a famous French scientist who's been considered the father of forensic science. He came up with this exchange principle, that there is a contact between two things, two objects, a person and a scene and a person, and something is transferred there. And this is the basic founding principle of forensic science. We're looking for what's left behind. And this is all inspired by Arthur Conan Doyle. Bite mark analysis.
Again, especially as forensic psychologists, what we do as an investigator is basically criminal profiling and connecting the evidences of the crime scene together. So even if the experts sometimes we can say that sometimes the forensic experts, say suppose someone who is analyzing fingerprints, they can understand that, okay, they can sometimes give you the scientific reasons behind, or they can evaluate whether the fingerprint belongs to this person or not. But as forensic psychologists, what we can do is basically understand the crime scene better by connecting these evidences. So one way as a forensic psychologist we will be helping in the crime scene investigation scene is basically through the informations that we, through our logical reasoning, connect through the evidences that are presented. Correct? Like you see in that one clip where Sherlock Holmes is basically understanding that so he checks that the coat is wet but the umbrella is not. So basically understanding probably the person has there was the whether it was raining outside or not. So it can be established whether the person whether the victim was outside before the crime had happened or not. The ice cube and the drink that was present in the table, whether there was a presence of a third person, and the ice cube hasn't melted, so the crime scene is fresh or not. So all these scenarios could be something that a forensic psychologist could help in tying up together as a crime scene investigator. So let's see the videos further.
NCIS.
Here's Ducky's muscle tissue scan, a little 3D magic for clarity, and I give you...
I think this is enough because, again, this is a form of odontology where the bite marks are compared with the teeth of the person. So again, such technology is not currently available, I think, in the world itself, because it's not that easy to analyze the bites as they're being shown in this video. So I'll just forward this.
Fun little. And one of the fields that they questioned was bite mark analysis, holding stuff that you would see at the dentist. You wouldn't be able to leave. You would have two different experts, two different odontologists that don't agree on the same case. So that's why this evidence has been questioned as of late.
Well, that's great, Chip.
RoboCop. So yeah, this is like really cool technology, no longer in the not too distant future. Obviously, it's not going to be like this. This is a movie, but we do use some of those types of technologies that we see there. So he's doing some sort of scanning. At crime scenes, we use a 3D laser scanner. And that's a great way to document the scene, the geometry of the scene, as well as taking imaging of the scene, to later on have a first-person perspective of what that scene looked like. And it's invaluable for reconstructions. You could bring a jury into that scene to show what it looked like first person virtually. And just think about for training, you have all these scenes that now are captured, and you can bring other people that weren't there to show them how we investigated the scene. He then uses the camera imaging of the surveillance cameras to do photogrammetry. So the positions of the cameras are solved, and then we could figure out the position where that car was originally. So he then takes those two types of evidence, pieces them together, and has this reconstruction.
So like we saw how in the RoboCop movie, the person is basically scanning all of the areas with the advanced technology. So again, this is not something that is available right now, but at the same time, as an investigator, we should have that kind of a talent, in the sense that we should be able to scan the area that we are investigating for a crime scene, and be able to understand what evidences could be important, what evidences are not important. And then the expert did talk about a 3D scanner that is used. Again, in some cases, especially a 3D scanner can be used, especially in an outside crime scene. It's really helpful in a scenario where the crime scene, where the crime scene is an outdoors crime scene. So in such scenario where outdoor crime scene, it helps in basically understanding and capturing the image in the 3D process, and then analyzing it further later on. However, as an investigator, so this is the reason why we document in the form of videography and photography, understanding what all elements and what all evidences were in which place, and then further in order to investigate afterwards, because a crime scene cannot be left as it is. The crime scene definitely gets rebuilt, or it has to be cleaned after a point. So when we talk about again assessing the crime scene, so these photographs and these videographs could help us in understanding whether these how the crime scene was at the time, and in order to understand whether the crime scene is. Hello, I'm hearing a disturbance.
Ma'am, I can hear you clearly.
Okay. Yeah. So again, so what I mean to tell here is, as an investigator, we should be like that RoboCop that was presented in that video, where we are able to look for all the evidences, where we have to understand the minute differences about what can be constituted as an evidence and what cannot be constituted as an evidence. So was that video helpful for you?
Yes, ma'am.
So you can watch the entire video if you want later on. But I think for this class, the starting videos were just some of the things that I wanted to add on using those videos. So I think that's it for today. But as I said, as I talked about criminal profiling, which we will be taking in the further class. So as forensic psychologist, criminal profiling is one of the area where we contribute significantly in an investigation. Okay?
Okay, ma'am. And ma'am, regarding the video, you can share the link in our group.
Yes, sure, definitely. I'll share it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Smita, it is clear to you?
Yes, sir.
That's good. So, thank you, Shita.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So, anything to be added now?
No, sir.
So, your class is over?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Okay,
So
thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
I'm very much interested if you can give me any internship on the criminal profiling.
Yes, sir. I can. I'll need some time to.
About
yes,
it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you can think about it. At least the review of literature.
Yes, sir. Definitely.
So, at least the data collection may not be possible, but review of literature may be possible. So,
okay, sir.
For that reason, I think that is better, because there are different types of criminal.
Yes, sir.
So, because the money laundering currently the money laundering is a very serious issue in India.
Yes.
So
yes.
that type of criminal and their personality, and
Yes,
the
sir.
criminal for the suicide, or
Correct.
the criminal for stealing or something,
Yes.
killing or etc. So
Yes, sir.
that their personality is different. So
Correct.
it comes to my mind that there are ample opportunities to study
Yes.
the personality profile of the different types of people with different types of criminality.
Yes, sir. I'll look
This
into
is
it.
my assumption. You can think about it.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. Yes.
So for that reason, I think 16 PF can provide us more information rather than the NEO. It
Yes.
seems to me, I'm not sure.
I'll look
First,
into it and I'll let you know.
yeah,
sir.
I think that is best one is the literature review.
Yes, sir. Definitely.
That is the best one.
Yes.
So we can start the internship. Now we are giving major importance on the internship,
Yes, sir.
and each internship there will be the training. So the students will be trained with specific objectives.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
sir.
you, Shweta. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
you.
Sir, I'll end the meeting.